Have you ever wanted to know why so many ancient rituals are steeped in blood and require sacrifice? What hidden forces seem to be manipulating the course of history? Or why certain symbols keep reappearing across all time? Today, I'll attempt to look behind the veil, to reveal an ancient and esoteric narrative that traces the metaphysical and symbolic evolution of ancient deities such as Baal, Saturn, and Moloch, of which have remained with us by way of modern occult systems, secret societies, and conspiracy theories. These entities and archetypes live on not because of their intrinsic nature, but because of humanity's desire to control. To control not only nature, but mass populations, historical events, and even the fabric of reality itself. The ancients knew Saturn not as a distant, ringed planet, but as a god who ruled over decay, time, and endings. He was often feared more than worshipped, representing the slow erosion of life, the inevitability of death, and the boundary between the known and the unknowable. Cicero, in De Natura Deorum, writes, "Saturn is called so because he is sated with years." He goes on to say, "Time swallows up the periods of time and is insatiably loaded with the years of the past, and for this reason Saturn is represented as devouring his own offspring." Plutarch noted in Roman Questions that Saturn's rites and sacrifices were performed with the head uncovered, capite aperto, unlike other Roman gods. This may be because, as Plutarch speculated, Saturn ruled a realm beneath the earth, and as the father of truth, he could not be hidden. The Greeks and Romans often saw truth as a form of revelation, a force incompatible with concealment. Thus, Saturn becomes a paradox, the god of hidden things who also lays bare the deepest truths. This concept of truth as exposure ties Saturn not only to time, but to cosmic inevitability. His domain was metaphysical, not just agricultural. Time was the reaper, the destroyer, the dissolver of illusion. In Roman thought, the image of Saturn with a sickle was both literal and symbolic. He harvested crops, but also lives, ideas, and civilizations. The sickle becomes both a tool of nourishment and a symbol of finality. In Ugaritic texts from ancient Ras Shamra, Baal, a Semitic storm god, often conflated with Saturn or Cronus in later syncretic traditions, rules over cycles of death and rebirth. His battles with Mot, the god of death, mirror the struggle between vitality and entropy. In the Baal cycle, Baal descends into the underworld and is trapped, causing fertility on earth to wither. Only through ritual mourning and symbolic resurrection is balance restored. This seasonal drama mirrors the passage of time and the necessity of loss before renewal. This mythic structure reveals a universe where time itself is sacrificial, cyclical, and divine. The death of Baal is not an end, but a phase, echoing Saturn's dominion over endings that give rise to beginnings. And so the veil of time becomes the first gate. Saturn the devourer, the lord of the black cube, the judge at the edge of time. When Plutarch wrote about sacrificial rites to Cronus, he did not mince words. They themselves offered up their own children. and those who had no children would buy little ones from poor people and cut their throats as if they were lambs or young birds. And the whole area before the statue was filled with a loud noise of flutes and drums, so that the cries of wailing should not reach the ears of the people. This was not metaphor. Diodorus Siculus and Tertullian corroborate these claims, describing massive rituals at Carthage, where children were burned alive in the bronze arms of Cronus. According to Diodorus, the parents were compelled to witness the act without weeping, as any show of sorrow would void the offering. This ritual took place in a sanctuary called the Tophet, often a walled precinct near the city's edge, where urns of charred bones have since been discovered. The statue was heated until glowing. The child, placed in its outstretched hands, would slide into the furnace below. Archaeological digs at Carthaginian sites such as Salambo have revealed hundreds of burial urns containing the remains of infants and small animals, often interred with inscriptions to Baal Haman and Tanit. Tertullian wrote, even centuries later, that this sacred crime was still secretly practiced. He described it as a perverse loyalty to tradition, a holdover from Phoenician religion, concealed behind new Roman gods and names. In these rites, the offering of innocent blood was not cruelty for its own sake. It was a transaction. The spilling of blood fed the god, secured the city, or warded off plague. In some instances, inscriptions suggest that child sacrifice was performed during times of civic crisis, droughts, wars, or disease. As Aleister Crowley later echoed in Magick in Theory and Practice, the bloody sacrifice, though more dangerous, is more efficacious. He referred to this not only in terms of physical ritual, but as a psychic act, one that ruptures ordinary consciousness and connects the magician with deeper realities. The principle was clear. Sacrificium is to make sacred, to take something pure, innocent, and precious, and deliver it to a force beyond human reckoning. These ancient fire rituals weren't random acts of brutality. They were coded forms of cosmic exchange, acts of spiritual economy written in flesh and flame. The victims became mediators between the human and divine worlds, gateways to propitiation, protection, or divine favor. With the rise of Hermetic philosophy, acts of worship became something more than isolated rituals. They were part of a larger metaphysical system. The gods, the stars, the human soul, even physical matter were seen as connected, layered within the same divine structure, a kind of cosmic lattice where everything corresponded to everything else. That core idea, as above, so below, comes straight from the Emerald Tablet, attributed to Hermes Trismegistus. It teaches that the heavens mirror the earth and vice versa. Planets align with inner faculties. Gods echo spiritual forces. The soul itself reflects the stars. Ritual wasn't about begging favor from a deity. It was about alignment. You performed a rite to harmonize yourself with the larger order of things. Hermetic texts like the Corpus Hermeticum describe the universe as a living being, a total unity. Alchemy, astrology, and theurgy weren't separate practices. They were tools for tuning the soul to that cosmic rhythm. If you offered a sacrifice under the right planetary hour, or sang a hymn in the correct tone, you weren't just following tradition. You were stepping into the machinery of the universe. In this system, the cosmos itself was the temple, and the initiate its conscious operator. But things shift when we look at Gnostic cosmology. Here, the structure remains, but it's twisted. The material world was made not by a benevolent creator, but by a demiurge, a lower being, blind or malevolent, who shaped matter as a trap. Often associated with Saturn, Cronus, or Yaldabaoth, This demiurge isn't evil in a simple sense. He's deluded. He thinks he's the only god and builds a world defined by control, limitation, and illusion. Valentinian Gnosticism takes this further. The demiurge operates without knowledge of the higher divine realms, the pleroma. He builds a universe of submission, hierarchy, and soulless bureaucracy. His realm is ruled by archons, powers that enforce the false order. And in this context, Saturn becomes the archetype of the limit, the barrier, the keeper of time and death. That's where ritual takes on a new function. It's not about worship anymore. It's a tool of escape. Every act of sacred knowledge becomes a way of slipping past the archons, bypassing the counterfeit structure. Gnostic rites, Hermetic invocations, alchemical transmutations, they're all part of a deeper rebellion. The goal is to remember, to reconnect with the source beyond this false creation. The initiate becomes a kind of navigator, threading through illusion in search of truth.
As classical Hermeticism faded from public view, its symbols and teachings slipped underground, preserved not in temples, but in alchemical treatises, Kabbalistic diagrams, and esoteric commentaries passed hand to hand. In the late 16th century, Giordano Bruno emerged as a crucial bridge between the ancient and the modern. He saw the cosmos as a divine, living intelligence, an infinite unity where the stars themselves were expressions of the one mind. Bruno's synthesis of Hermetic cosmology, Neoplatonism, and Kabbalah challenged the orthodoxy of his time and ultimately cost him his life. But his vision endured. Across the early modern period, practitioners of alchemy and mysticism continued to encode ancient truths in layered symbols, planets as metals, angels as intelligences, and Hebrew letters as gates to the divine. Most documentation is fragmentary, or even lost completely. However, chances are there may exist private collections teeming with forgotten manuscripts and grimoires, detailing forbidden arcane knowledge. In the late 19th century, as interest in esoteric traditions resurged in Europe, occult orders began reinterpreting these ancient deities and philosophies through new ritual frameworks. Chief among them was the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. Founded in the year 1888 in London, the Golden Dawn synthesized Kabbalah, tarot, Enochian magic, astrology, and ancient Egyptian rites. Its founders, Samuel Liddell MacGregor Mathers, William Wynne Westcott, and William Robert Woodman, claimed to possess a set of secret manuscripts passed to them from continental Rosicrucian societies. These texts laid out complex initiation rituals and magical correspondences. Each degree in the Golden Dawn was linked to a specific element, planet, and Sephiroth on the Tree of Life. Saturn, unsurprisingly, was associated with the Sephirah Binah, representing understanding, discipline, and limitation. Binah was the dark womb, the matrix of form, and Saturn was its planetary ruler. Aleister Crowley, who entered the Golden Dawn in 1898, later broke from it and founded his own magical system, Thelema. In The Book of the Law, which was transmitted through trance in Cairo, Crowley writes, "Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law." His work reframed ritual sacrifice as internalized transmutation, what he termed crossing the abyss. In Thelemic initiations, Saturn still loomed as the dweller on the threshold, the archon Choronzon, or the guardian of the void between the self and ultimate knowledge. Eliphas Levi, another foundational occultist, described the ancient priest-magicians not as savages, but as custodians of the universal doctrine, a knowledge encoded in symbols and myths. For Levi, figures like Baal, Moloch, and Cronus weren't gods in a literal sense, but personified forces of nature and mind. In Dogme et Rituel de la Haute Magie, Levi wrote, "To evoke a spirit is to enter into sympathy with it, to attract its power through will and right." Crowley would later echo this: "The gods are names for forces." In this view, Moloch becomes not a deity to be worshipped, but a spiritual formula, the force of sacrifice, of transformation through fire. These interpretations weren't limited to literature. The Golden Dawn and its offshoots used ritual robes, temple geometry, planetary invocations, and banishing rituals to channel these forces. The pentagram and hexagram, drawn in ether with the tip of a wand, became the modern sigils of power. The practitioner became the axis between worlds. What had once been the fire altar of Carthage was now the inner altar of initiation. As the 20th century unfolded, ancient symbols began to seep into the fabric of modern life. What began as obscure esoteric imagery migrated into architecture, finance, corporate branding, and popular media. Researchers on the fringes, conspiracy theorists, independent historians, occult revivalists, began drawing lines between these scattered symbols and the quiet movements of power. Manly P. Hall, in The Secret Teachings of All Ages, suggested that modern governments and secret orders are not new forces, but inheritors of an ancient priesthood. The Illumined of antiquity, he wrote, understood how the destiny of empires could be guided by the wisdom of the stars and the rituals of the sacred flame. This idea that a hidden elite preserves the ritual legacy of Saturn, Cronus, Baal, or Moloch evolved into a full framework of modern occult conspiracy. Groups labeled Illuminati, Saturnian Brotherhood, or Luciferian cabals are said to encode ancient rites into political theater, religious symbolism, and even corporate design. Their rituals, we're told, are not performed on remote mountaintops, but in marble halls, under black robes, with full awareness of the gods they still serve. Central to this theory are symbols said to encode allegiance to these powers. The black cube, Saturn's geometric seal, appears in corporate plazas, art installations, and fashion. The owl of Minerva, ancient symbol of hidden wisdom and nocturnal vision, is said to represent an elite that watches in the dark. And the all-seeing eye, once divine, now suspect, is found on the dollar bill, etched into architecture, echoed in film. The single covered eye, repeated in celebrity photo shoots and music videos, has become the subject of intense scrutiny. Is it a stylized pose or a ritual signal? Even popular entertainment seems to participate. Blockbuster films frame Saturnian themes, control, sacrifice, rebirth, within epic narratives. Music videos mimic initiation rites. Some claim this is programming, others say it's marketing, but either way, the old gods have found new vessels. Skeptics call this apophenia, a failure to distinguish pattern from coincidence. But to the esoteric mind, coincidence is just a lesser word for correspondence. As Eliphas Levi wrote, "Symbols are the speech of the invisible." If that's true, then the speech hasn't stopped. It simply changed its dialect. What was once spoken in temples of Tyre and Eleusis now murmurs through neon signs, bank logos, and fashion runways. As we've seen, the journey from ancient ritual to modern symbol is anything but linear. The gods of old, Saturn, Cronus, Baal, and Moloch, were once living forces, invoked at altars and feared in storms. Over time, their names and images passed through philosophical filters. Hermetic thinkers saw in them not just deities, but cosmic functions, principles of time, matter, death, will. For the Hermeticist, a god was not an idol, but a cipher, something pointing beyond itself into the metaphysical architecture of the cosmos. Later Gnostics and Esotericists reinterpreted these figures even further. The gods became archons, the archons became prisons, and the material world itself became a false structure, a spiritual misfire. Symbols once used for worship were recast as tools of resistance. In the hands of the alchemist, the Kabbalist, and eventually the occultist, these ancient names took on new meanings. Saturn became the boundary one must transcend, the black cube a diagram of containment and awakening. Cronus, once devourer of his children, became a metaphor for linear time devouring the eternal soul. But these meanings are not fixed. They've been layered, reinterpreted, even distorted. Much of what we've explored in this video leans on speculative associations, not hard historical facts. The black cube of Saturn, the six-pointed star as union of opposites, or the all-seeing eye as pineal gland. These are not found in ancient texts. They are modern syntheses, products of esoteric intuition and cultural remixing. And while that may frustrate purists, it also speaks to the power of symbol itself, the invitation to see deeper, even if the historical thread has frayed. It is here that Jean Baudrillard's concept of simulacra becomes relevant. In his Simulacra and Simulation, Baudrillard writes, "It is no longer a question of imitation, nor duplication, nor even parody. It is a question of substituting the signs of the real for the real." In this hyper-real world, the symbol is no longer pointing to something behind it. It becomes the thing itself. The copy replaces the original, and we navigate a world of references without reference. The goat-headed Baphomet, the black cube, the eye in the triangle. These are no longer echoes of Saturn, Hermes, or ancient gods. They are living images, modern myths in their own right. So while much of this journey is built on fragile historical threads, the web they form is no less meaningful. Speculation, in this context, isn't deception. It's exploration. The value lies not just in what these symbols were, but in what they have become. They are part of a living tradition, refracted through centuries of visionaries and mystics. In the end, the question isn't whether these ancient gods or rituals still exist, but whether the energy channeled into them now only serves to summon something far more powerful. Symbols, shadows, and sacred scripts, each one a key to the epic unknown. Thank you for watching.